வணக்கம். குரு பிரம்மா, குரு விஷ்ணு, குருதேவோ மகேஸ்வரः, குரு சாக்ஷாத் பரம்பிரம்ம தஸ்மை ஸ்ரீ குரவே நமः. Namaste, and we are again here to look at the lives of some of the great women of India. We already know some of their names. We are familiar with names like Sita, Draupadi, Kunti, Kausalya, Sumitra, Gandhari, and so on. However, there had been so many of them all across this Akhanda Bharat that it would not be possible for any of us to even enumerate the names of these great women in one lifetime. We shall look at some of them, try and derive some kind of inspiration and motivation to be like what they were. These great women did things out of their devotion, faith, and of course, forthrightness, that many of their activities have given room to revolution and reformation. I'm now going to recap the life, or rather, one incidence from the life of a little girl whose action created a kind of a total reformation in the minds of her contemporary society. This girl was the daughter of a great scholar by name Periyanambi. Periyanambi was one of the spiritual preceptors of Ramanuja. Many of you would have heard of Emperumanar or Ramanuja, who was the proponent of the Visishtadvaita philosophy and who is considered the establisher of Sri Vaishnava philosophy. Ramanuja was a student or a disciple of Periyanambi. Periyanambi lived in Sri Rangam, and Periyanambi was himself the disciple of another great scholarly personality by name Alavandar. Alavandar had given Upadesha to Periyanambi, and Periyanambi was such a pious person that he would do things the way he had to do them. Now, what did he do? He was pious, he was God-fearing, he worshipped, all that was fine. But then he did something which the people around him did not accept. And what was that? There was yet another person, a very devoted person by name Maraner Nambi. Some of you would be aware that at that time, sometime around the 13th century, the societal conditions were slightly different. Some people born in certain castes and clans were considered outcast. There was some kind of a social discrimination. Maraner Nambi was considered to be from a lower caste, and Periyanambi belonged to the Brahmin caste. It so happened that Periyanambi did not bother about all this. He saw godliness, God Vishnu in everything and in everyone, and he would go to Maraner Nambi, and Maraner Nambi was a little sick, and Periyanambi would do all kinds of help, would remain next to him, bathe him, wash his body, wash his clothes, and so on. And when Maraner Nambi died, Periyanambi performed the last rites. Now, this created a big furor in some of those people who called themselves to be of the upper caste. They did not approve Periyanambi's action. They said, how could Periyanambi do this? What can we do? He should not have done this. Now what can we do to him? We shall make him an outcast from our society. He should not come out at all. Periyanambi's house was in the street on which the Lord's procession would go. Swami's procession, the God's procession would go. They said, no, this Periyanambi is an outcast. We will not permit him to come when the Lord's procession is on, and we will not accept him as someone who belongs to our clan at all. So what they did was, Periyanambi's house has a door, like all our houses has a door, right? The door through which we go out. So what they did was shut the door from outside and put lots of things which would hurt him if he comes out, like lots of iron bars and things like that, and spikes and all that, so he could not come out, and anyone from inside the house could not come out. Periyanambi accepted it, tolerated it. He said fine. He was not worried. He was not worried because he saw godliness everywhere, and to him Vishnu was next to him. He could see Vishnu by his drishti there itself. So he did not get worried at all. And his daughter was a Turai. Turai is a Tamil word for basil, the holy basil or the tulsi. The girl herself was named after the tulsi or the basil, and she was called Turai, Atturai. And this little girl, the permission was the little girl can go because she was so small. The people who had shut the door said if the girl wants to go, she can go through the side entrance. She could go out and come back, but then the control is only on Periyanambi. But this girl did not go herself. She thought, no, when father has been offended, let me also not go. She had so much of maturity. She was very small, but then she had so much of equanimity and magnanimity. She said, when my father has been told not to come, let me also not go. She decided to remain inside. She was inside the house. She would not go out. But then she felt so sad. She felt so upset about what had happened. She all the time used to think about what had happened. The Lord of Sri Rangam is, all of us know, Lord Ranganatha. And she would pray to Lord Ranganatha and say, Ranga, what is this? What mistake did my father do? He only performed the last rites to a great man. And what is wrong? You dwell in everyone, right? Ranga, you're there in everyone's body. You're dwelling in every place. You're here on this. You're here on the floor. You're here on this object. You're here. And how could people do this? They call themselves educated. They all know so much of scriptures. They all chant all the pasurams. But then they've done this. Are they right? Ranga, can you not do something about this? So every day this girl would lament within her heart and feel bad about it. As the days passed by, as I told you earlier, that was the street on which the Lord's procession would go. So in the next few days, there was an occasion where the Lord's procession came, what we call as Urvanam. So the Lord was brought in a palanquin. That's what happens, isn't it? You all would have seen. The God is brought in a palanquin or God is brought in a pedestal. People carry that pedestal and come. So there is some kind of a procession. So the God is coming in a procession. Lord Ranganatha, Lord Namperumal was coming in a procession. Usually it is the Utchava deity of the temple which is brought in a procession. So the procession was on that street and Athurai knew procession was approaching. And as the Lord came close to her house, she darted out like an arrow. She darted out. She went and fell right straight there. The people who were carrying the Lord on their shoulders, the Sri Padam Tangi, they could do nothing. They had to stop. They had to halt. This little girl darted and came and fell and they had to stop. So they stopped. And Athurai cried, Ranga, what has happened, you know? Now I promise on myself, you will not move from here without answering my question. I'm lying here without answering my question. Without answering my question, if my father has done anything wrong, you will not move from here. It was a terrible shock to all those people. They tried moving. No, the Lord would not move. The Sri Padam Tangis who were all, holding the pedestal on their shoulders, they were trying to move. No, they could not move. Because Namperumal decided to stay there. The procession stopped. Namperumal was so heavy that they could not move. They all just looked blank. They didn't know what to do. And all those elders who had made Periyanambi an outcast, they were all perplexed, shocked, beyond words. And there was absolute silence. As this girl questioned the Lord and declared her promise, her sankalpa, this should not move without answering me. Little girl she was. As a reaction to her sankalpa, there was absolute silence. And in that pin drop silence, suddenly burst out a voice. The voice of the Lord himself. The Lord said, there was nothing wrong in Periyanambi performing the last rites to Maraner Nambi. In fact, what Periyanambi did is close to my heart. And who says this? The first person statement coming from the Lord himself. What he did is close to my heart, and that was the declaration by the God himself. Not only that, the God immediately, in the same voice, we call it Ashariri. Sharir is the body. When there is a voice without a sharir, you call it Ashariri. It's called the Ashariri. And in that Ashariri, the Lord commanded. There was another devotee there by name Kandadai Appan. He called Kandadai Appan and said, go inside and fetch Periyanambi on your shoulders. So Kandadayappan ran inside the house, breaking all those barricades, ran inside the house and fetched Periyanampi. Athurai was ecstatic. Not that she was ecstatic, that is not the point of importance. But by her command, by her forthrightness, she had brought about a complete reformation in the society. After which, devotees, true devotees, stopped making any distinction on the basis of one's birth, caste, or clan. Everyone is the Lord's child. If all of us are the God's children, if all of us are Vishnu's children, if all of us are Shiva's children, if all of us are Parvati's children, how can there be any distinction? And it was that sankalpa which was there in the mind of Athurai that brought about a sea change in the society in which she lived. Is not Athurai a great person? I don't dare calling her a great woman because she was a little girl. So we can call her the great girl. If Athurai in South India did this, we have such great examples in slightly northern parts of the country too. Let's think of one little girl. Many of you would be aware of the Varikari sect in Pandharpur and in Maharashtra. Some people call it the Varkari sect. It can be either the Varkari or the Varikari or the Varkari. It only means those devotees who would move. Now, Vari is something that moves. So the devotees would move to have a darshan of Vittal at Pandharpur. They would chant bhajans, they would sing abhangs. Now, in the Varikari tradition, there is a small shloka which most of the devotees recite every day. The shloka mentions some names. It says, think of Nivriti, Jnanadeva, Sopan, Mukta, Eknath, Namadeva, and Tukaram every day. Now you find 7 names. Of the 7, Nivriti, Jnanadeva, Sopan, Eknath, Namadeva, and Tukaram are the names of men. In between you have one little name, Mukta, and that was the name of a little girl. This little girl is supposed to have lived only till 18 years of age. She was struck by lightning and died when she was 18. She was Muktabai. Muktabai is given a place of pride in the Varikari tradition and in the tradition of devotion. What did Mukta do? Mukta was born the last child to her parents. There were 4 of them. Nivriti, Jnanadeva, Sopan were the 3 brothers, and Mukta was the last. Their parents were considered outcasts by the contemporary society. Their father had taken sannyas when he was very young, but then after some time he came back. He was already married. He had left his wife and gone, and then the wife was waiting, and after some time he came back, and They had 4 children. They were very nice people, very devoted, very affectionate, and did not do any wrong to anyone. But it so happened some people in the place where they lived, Alandi, the place was called Alandi, and the people around thought a sannyasi should not become a householder, so he is outcast. He cannot come here. He should get out of this village. And the entire family was tortured so much that one day the father decided to kill himself, and the mother also followed suit. And these 4 children were left. And the 2 elder brothers would go out, sing songs, and get some food for eating, when the last brother, Sopan, would look after this little child. Almost, just barely a child, this little girl, Mukta. Many of us would know the name of Jnanadeva. He is the one who authored Jnaneshwari, an exposition on the Gita. Now, what did Mukta do? Mukta was with the brothers, seen the life when she was so young. She had seen the miseries of life, being thrown out by others, but she was such a devoted and mature person that she realized God. Not that she realized God, but God also realized her. One incident is quoted in her life. These 4 of them went to Pandharpur one day. They wanted to have darshan of Lord Vittal, and they all went. And in Pandharpur, Namadeva was sitting. Namadeva was a great devotee of Lord Vithoba of Pandharpur. And Namadeva thought that he was very close to the God. So he was sitting close to the sanctum, thinking that he had the privilege to sit there and he had the rights to sit there. And all those people who came to the temple will bow down to Vithoba, worship Vithoba, also bow down to Namadeva and go. The 3 older brothers, Nivritti, Jnanadeva, and Sopan, 3 of them did the same to Namadeva. But then this little girl, Sopan was just holding her hand and bringing her, this little girl Mukta came. She worshipped Vithoba and then turned like that to Namadeva, refused to worship Namadeva, refused to bow down to Namadeva, and moved. Everybody was taken aback. They thought, little girl, she doesn't know. But then, stepping across, she said, where there is God, I will bow down. God is everywhere. But God refuses to remain in a place where there is too much of ahankara and ignorance. Namadeva was flabbergasted, taken aback. How dare a little girl talk like this? Everyone was shivering. But then something inside Namadeva, because he was also a scholarly person, he was a very devoted person. So something inside Namadeva told him, here is one little girl who's kind of, hitting me on my ahankara. No, let me find out. So he went to that little girl and asked, what should I do? She said, go to Gora Gumba. Gora Gumba was the potter. You go to Gora Gumba and ask him if your head is all right. So from Pandharpur, Namadeva went to Alandi. Alandi is the place where Gora Gumba was. So he went to Alandi. And Gora Gumba, in an assembly where people were eating, and then he was sitting in one corner, Gora Gumba would just test people. No, he would feed them, but then also test. His way of testing was very unique. He would just have one wooden rod and then knock, knock on the head and say, no, 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 you're not mature enough. Your head is still not the correct thing. You test something when you want to test some inanimate thing. You just knock. If you want to test a vessel or if you want to test coconut, what do? You just tap and check. That way, Goragamba would do that. And Namadeva was initially very offended. And Goragamba did the same thing to Namadeva and said, no, 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 this is kacha. This is still not in the correct level. This is kacha. It is not in the correct state. No, 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 you go. And after which, Namadeva is supposed to have sought a guru and got his enlightenment. That is when he realized God is everywhere and not in one place alone. What was Namadeva's mistake? He thought Pandharpur, the sanctum, that is where I am. I am close to the God, so I can sit there. The rest of them are all no. And this little girl opened his inner eye and made him realize that godliness is all around. And the external form of someone being big does not matter at all. You're educated. No. Namadeva was educated. But it was not that education that mattered. It is not that being close to the sanctorum that matters, but then being self-realized. Understand that godliness is all over that matters. And Mukta made such a person like Namadeva understand. We all really worship Namadeva, but then please understand, Namadeva, his inner eye was opened by this little girl, Mukta. There's another incident that they say about Mukta. Her own brother, Jnanadeva, the second brother was Jnanadeva. One day, he shut the door and kind of, shut himself inside the house. Why? You can understand these 4 children were there and the village would have talked so much about them. The village might have thrown kind of mudslinging on them. And probably that hurt Jnanadeva. So one day he shut himself and said, I'm not coming out of the house. No, I'm not coming out. All these people are talking rubbish about me. They're calling me by names. I will not come out. And this little girl, Mukta, she was standing out. There are some abhangs which have been sung by Mukta, which are still sung today in the abhang tradition. And those familiar with the abhang tradition will know there is one very famous abhang which is attributed to Mukta, Thati Che Abhang, the song of the door. Thati Che Abhang is the song of the door. She stand outside the door and sang to the brother inside, in which she asked some questions. She asked one question. Aho krodhyave. Where did this anger come from? Where did this anger come from, my dear Jnanadeva? You're angry because people called you names. Why are you angry? Don't you know? Janate chi Janardan. Everyone is divine. Everyone is godly. Everything is Janardan. If you know everything is Janardan, why do you have to be angry with people? They are also Janardan, right? Why do you have to be angry with them? Our duty is only to serve Janardan. That is all. We are to serve Janardan. That is all. Why should you get angry? Don't you think that you should leave out this anger? Open the door, Jnanadeva. Open the door and come out. It might appear that the above had been sung to a particular context, but then think of the context. It is not that one day Jnanadeva shut himself inside. We have shut our Atma inside. All of us have shut our Atma inside, the divine Atma. And we look at the external world. We are worried about somebody saying something. We are worried about somebody giving us fame, somebody not giving us fame. We are only worried about what is all external, materialistic, right? I want fame, I want power, I want authority, I want money, I want approval, everything from outside. We have forgotten that divine Lord resides inside. And that divine Atma is sitting in, and we have shut the door. So she said, open that door. Open that door and see everything is divine. It is all divinity all around. And that is what she said by saying, Janatechi Janardhan. Everything is Janardhan. And what a lovely question it was. Aho krodiyave. Where did all this anger, your anger, where did it come from? She opened not only the eyes of Jnanadeva. By that question, she in fact has opened the eyes of everyone. She opened initially the eyes of Namadeva, and then she opened the eyes of Jnanadeva, and she, of course, has opened the eyes of all of us. How great she was. A little girl who died, the physical body of Mukta died when she was barely 18. But that small little act of hers, it might appear to be one simple act. It might appear to be one single act at one occasion. But what profound love, what profound devotion lies within that act. On one side, we found Aturai. On the other side, we find Mukta. Both of them were little girls, but both of them had paved the way for greatness to happen in the society. With the thoughts of Aturai and Mukta, let's resume our study of these great leaders, great people, great women